On this call, I just wanted to talk with you a little bit about the process of bringing a Vietnamese woman to the United States. As you know, there are a lot of people who think about it. Maybe they're in the process of getting married and they wonder, what's the process like? Because it seems overwhelmingly difficult. But then when you listen to somebody like you who has done it, it doesn't seem to be so difficult anymore. So if you could please tell us what the process was like for you and where are you currently at in the process? Are you done with the process? And what are some tips? But let's start out with just the whole process of bringing a Vietnamese woman to the United States. What was it like?
Sure. So I'll talk about it in the context of as an American, since that's my citizenship, my background. So I worked with the U.S. consulate in Saigon, so that's where I'm based right at the moment. So I met my current wife about 3 years ago, and we dated straight from the beginning and decided to marry around that time too. So we dated for a while and then discussed marriage and then got through that process. So the thing that we did is we hired an agency in Vietnam for about 900 US dollars. They will take care of the paperwork for you because one, I didn't have the time. Two, I would rather hire professionals to get it done on my behalf. So that's the route we took. And we had some trouble, honestly, with the first agency. And again, you have to remember this was during COVID. So it was delayed, our application, for quite a while. And we waited, maybe 8 months. And then it turned into like 12 months and then more than that.
Wow.
And they kept on saying it's because of COVID. The consulate, the embassy in the U.S., the government is not functioning. Everything's closed off. And so we just went with that. However, my wife got a little bit antsy and then she asked around. And then we got a second recommendation to go with another person. And then the second agency slash person was very, very helpful. She submitted our paperwork and then was able to get us to process and pay the fees online. And then she was able to give us updates on our application. So that helped ease some of the worry we had. If you want to do the marriage in Vietnam, what's important is documentation. So what we did is we documented every step of our relationship in terms of getting married. And then so that's the first step, is going through the marriage ceremony or registering it in Vietnam. So my wife being Vietnamese, she was able to do that and then process our papers locally. And then a year after that, we had the actual marriage ceremony. And so we rented a restaurant and had friends and family come. And again, this was during COVID, so things were quite restricted. So we have receipts of the places where we stayed. We had photographs. We had a marriage with a photo album, and then even documentation of our flights back to Buon Ma Thuột or Dak Lak province. So the key here is to document the relationship in terms of the time we spent together. For example, like when we signed a lease for an apartment, we wanted to make sure that her name and my name were on there. So this is just good documentation so that the authorities, the U.S. consulate, will say, yes, this is a legitimate relationship. There's documentation. There's a wedding ceremony. There's receipts. They spent time together. There's pictures of them together. So this will help your case in order to get a interview and then ultimately a visa if you want to bring your wife over to America or to another Western country. So from there, after we got the application, it took a good, I would say, 3 to 6 months before we heard from the U.S. agency in America that confirmed, saying that they received our application, it's in full, and now it's in the possession of the U.S. consulate. I can go on, but I'll stop here if you have any other questions before I keep rolling on here.
No, that's pretty interesting. And I think, as you pointed out, things really slowed down during the COVID pandemic. I mean, usually, right? I mean, what a time frame are we talking about? Because yes, COVID was a very special time where you say, hey, things probably took twice or three times as long. But what if you had undergone the process during any normal time and not COVID? Like, how long would it typically take you to have all the paperwork ready from start to finish? So what time frame are we talking about? Like, are we talking about half year? Are we talking about less than half year?
Yeah, I would say during normal times, it would be about 8 months to 1 year would be the normal processing time to one, get all the paperwork ready, two, submit it, and then wait about 6 months before you get confirmation that they received it. And then from there, once the U.S. consulate receives it, then they have to announce an interview date. And that's what we were waiting on for a while. And so we luckily got the interview date, I would say, a month ago. And so then when they call you in, that's the time where my wife gets interviewed during that process.
That's great. So if I were a person, let's say I'm in a relationship with a Vietnamese girl, I want to bring my girl to the United States, because you did say that you used an agency. And when people hear the word agency, they automatically think that, oh, it was very, very hard for him to do it, so he outsourced it. Is this something that the average person could do on their own, or would you rather suggest outsourcing it? I mean, you have gone down that path, but I also need to add, right, this is something that you typically only do once in your life. Okay, there are people who get married twice or three times, so it's possible that they repeat the process, but I think the average person does it once, right? But I get that point. So from a time perspective, right, it typically is better to outsource it. You don't have to undergo all this trial and error, figuring stuff out on your own, because you hired an expert who has done it like hundreds of times, hopefully, right? So what do you suggest that the average person would do in your case? You know, if the person, say, has time, maybe they don't want to spend the money, or maybe they're actually scared that the agency screws up. That happens too. So what's your recommendation here?
I would go the agency route. And if I were to do it again, I would get some recommendations or even join a Facebook group on the Vietnam side. And that's how my wife was able to find the second agency. She had some questions. She joined a Facebook group and they were able to answer some questions. And then they recommended someone in Saigon to work with. In short, I would say the agency route is helpful because, one, they've got the experience. Two, they do the paperwork, and then the consulting, they'll tell you what you need. And so you're less likely to screw it up. As you say, it's a once in a lifetime. You don't have too many chances to do the paperwork and then, wait another year. Or if you screw up, you got to apply and wait another year. So, time is of the essence. And so, you might be able to, if you have the time, maybe you're a part-time worker working online and you really want to devote yourself and throw yourself into this and study up on it, read up on the website, etc. You might have the confidence to do it yourself. But again, there's going to be pitfalls. You're going to take more risk. And there's more chances of you screwing up without getting professional consultation during the process.
Consider subscribing if you haven't already. I'm uploading new videos on digital nomad locations, travel updates, and investment advice several times a week right now. And if you got some more time left, check out these videos.